What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr War Games, and today I'm bringing you the final from locals. So you can see on the top we have Carl playing Exosisters, and on the bottom we have myself playing Darkworld Dangers. Now we start off with me going first, but Carl has opened up Dimension Shifter, one of the worst cards we could possibly be facing as a Darkworld player. Luckily, we have opened up Fenrir, so we get to use its effect, special summoning itself down, and then using the effect to search out a second copy of itself. Now, it's all about how we can now continue to play under a Shifter. Shifter is incredibly powerful against this deck because the Dark Worlds need the graveyard, but the Dangers don't. The Dangers, if they do get discarded, will still be able to summon themselves, as they don't need to go to the graveyard, whereas sadly, the Dark Worlds do. If the Dark Worlds just said, if this card is discarded by card effect, great. But they do say specifically to the graveyard. Big sad. Anyway, we activate Allure of Darkness and our opponent responds with Ash. So they've opened up Shifter and Ass. They've got Ass. Shifter and Ass. Shifter and Ash. So he now has 3 more cards to play with and 1 card for the top deck. We still have a total of 4 cards, I believe, to play with. So I believe one of those is a danger, if not multiples of dangers. So we're going to start revealing those in a short second. It's the only way you can kind of build your board. Unfortunately, I believe, if I remember correctly, my hand's something like 3 dangers plus Genta. So without having the ability to use Genta to get to gate, and without having the ability to get another Dark World to the board, the Genta is just going to get banished. And would have been ideal if I did open up like an Archives or a Gate, because then Genta could have summoned itself back and it would have been easier to get to something like a Baguska, but didn't do that. We then miss or lose the Bigfoot, summoning out the Nessie, but the Nessie still gives us a draw. We've banished 3 cards that haven't been able to really gain us any advantage at the moment. The Allure might have been quite nice to have, but ultimately it would have just drawn me into the 2 cards that I would have got, but I could have dug further with the Dangers. So we reveal Snake, so we've got Snake and Fenrir in the hand. He hits the Snake, and this is the example of they just need to be discarded. So I'm just being asked to double check that now, and obviously I triple checked that as I was reading the card out. So it just needs to be, or Dangers themselves just need to be discarded. So as long as they are, they will get that as well. And plus, because they don't discard as discard as cost, they can't miss timing like the DD Crow on Ben 10 rule. So Snake hits the board. I could go into something like a Saruja, but then if that gets hit with an Imperm, it's just literally lights out, game over. So the best kind of form of interaction, or the way to kind of slow my opponent down or do whatever I can to them during their turn, is going to be able to go into an IP Masquerena and then be able to kind of... So the end board is a Fenrir in the hand, Fenrir on the board, and then the ability of IP plus Unicorn, plus Nessie gets me into Unicorn. So I've got a nice little bounce, and I've got a Fenrir banish. And when my opponent's only playing with 4 cards, it's kind of like, well, what have they got? Annoyingly, they do have a main deck Dark Ruler, which is instantly going to shut off my entire board and put that to shame. And it's like, please don't have a Martha, please don't have a Martha, please don't have a Martha. Because if they have that 1 card combo, it is pretty much not going to end well for me. Now, obviously, I know I'm not going to take battle damage, but ultimately, you go Martha, and I just scoop it up there, because Martha gets the rank 4. So you go Machillis banishes one of my cards, kills one of the others, and goes from there. So going into game 2, I let my opponent go first. We can see that he's already opened up Dark Ruler no more, and they've opened up the Shifter. So the Shifter comes down, completely shuts me off from my graveyard during my turn, and they've opened up the Martha. So the hand is pretty much the same as game 1. Shifter, Martha, and Dark Ruler, so it's not gonna be a fun time. Martha successfully summons Elise from the deck. This is gonna get the first XYZ or the rank 4 for the turn, and that's going to be able to go into a Castel. Castel mandatory effect, and then secondary effect, detaching a material is going to attempt to search out a Exosister monster. This is then going to search out Sophia, and we're going to get the other Exosister, I believe, that lets him special 1 from the hand. So ultimate combo, even going first, going second, it wouldn't have mattered, because I would have still been facing a Shifter, and no matter what board I put on, I would also be facing down a Dark Ruler as well. So hindsight, damn, that sucks. So Sophia draws an additional card, and then overlaying both of those into Machillis. Machillis effect can get the trap card that will ultimately turn into a banish 4 during my turn. So it's a very, very powerful board to kind of deal with. bar anything absolutely amazing and board wiping, literally clearing the entire board out. I probably need something like a Raigeki or a Lightning Storm, because if you get rid of the Exosister monster, then the trap card kind of just falls apart and doesn't really go anywhere. So obviously the two of those are going to go into a Machillis. Machillis has her effect to banish, and then will ultimately have the effect of Magnifica will have her effect to banish, and then Machillis will have an effect to banish. Setting one as well is going to be the trap card that just got searched off of Machillis, and that's, like I said, going to turn into a banish. There's no need to try and XYZ or rank up anything like that, but ultimately going to do a huge amount of damage to the board in general, and just everything else that you're trying to work with, which kind of sucks a little bit. So we draw for turn. Ultimately, I believe I've got a Magnamute in hand, there's an Evenly Matched, and there is also a Darkworld Archives and a couple of Dangers. So haven't got as many of the Darkworlds I would have liked, plus I'm also playing under Shifter, so I've got to be quite reserved with what I do decide to send to the graveyard. So there's no need for the life points to be at 52, so please ignore that. Should have noticed that from the start, but the game has been reset to 8,000. So now just kind of contemplating of what we've got here. The idea is, I believe I've also got Fenrir. So the Fenrir is a nice way to bait something out. It's not as good as you would have liked it to be, because it will still leave a sister on the board. But special summoning out the Fenrir is, I believe I've also got Evenly as well. So it's like, do I use the Evenly first and then the Fenrir? But I don't think it... The thing with, if you keep the Fenrir back, or you use the Fenrir now, is you'll still have a battle phase, because you can still declare an attack with Fenrir while he's on the board. The idea would be that it's rare that Fenrir is going to be allowed to stay on the board, and it would get banished. It would also allow me to get a second copy of Fenrir. So the idea is that you would bait out with the first declaration of the Fenrir, you'd then evenly at towards the end of the battle phase, and then you can special summon down the Fenrir you just searched off of the first one. So you're trying to get in like the maximum value with this type of hand. Because if they chose not to banish the Fenrir, I would still have been able to have, like, I would still get rid of a form of banish from the Magnifica. So with the Fenrir here, we're now going to attempt to declare an attack with it. Then we're going to use this effect on declaration to target the Magnifica to banish it. Now, obviously the way this will then go to... The way this will go from here is it'll detach a material off of the Magnifica to banish the Fenrir, and then use her second effect to tag her into a Machillis. At the end of the battle phase, we're going to trigger the Evenly Matched to get rid of one of the two cards. Obviously, he doesn't want to get rid of the monster because it still has an active banish. So if he gets rid of the trap, is, you know, like if you get rid of the monster, the trap's completely dead. Where if you get rid of the trap, the monster still has the banish. They're still in a good position. Annoyingly, our hand isn't the greatest. There's a lot of if, buts, and maybes. There's nothing really confirmed. So we'll special summon out the Fenrir, the second Fenrir that we have. Ultimately, that Machillis is only going to be active during this turn. So we know that either Fenrir or the Magnamute that we put on the board will get banished. In hindsight, there was a couple of different ways I could have played this, but it would have ultimately led to an OTK route anyway. So there wasn't a win or like a way to wall up enough from this. So we special out the Fenrir. That is going to provide one form of interruption. And then it's just whether or not you use the Magnamute now or save it for your opponent's turn. The reason you would do it now is because it will get you the Druid Swarm during the end phase that you can then use during your opponent's turn. So we're going to reveal the Magnamute. We're going to target the Shifter in the graveyard. We're going to banish the Shifter, summon down the Magnamute, and attempt to go to the end phase to search off of the Magnamute. And that's where Machillis is going to come in to banish the Fenrir. We'll resolve the Magnamute to search out the Druid Swarm. And this is again where it gets a little bit more difficult as well, because ultimately what that's going to do is if my opponent, which will ultimately go into another Machillis or at least the Magnifica, banishes the Magnamute on board, I'm going to have no Dark in the graveyard to even summon. So very, very tricky position to be in. I've not really left anything on board for them to be worried about, plus the graveyard's empty, so if he did have another Shifter, annoying as it may be, he could drop that second Shifter, and that will ultimately, you know, pretty much spell game over, as if it wasn't already. But we're going to keep trying to battle through it and see how far we can dig, how far we can push. We still have a lot of dangers, we're just waiting for the Shifter to kind of fall out of play, which it has done now. So he activates Prosperity, which means I am going to live to see another day because there's only going to be half damage. Ultimately, when you see the rest of the hand play out, there was no way of playing around this particular board, because if you guys are thinking like, well, if you just held back the Fenris, summoned down the Magnamute would have still got Druid Swarm, the Magnamute would have been banished, you would have still been in an okay position. Ultimately, everything would have been empty. I think the best thing, it still would have pushed to an OTK, and I'll explain that if we get to it. But the reveal of the Prosperity isn't the greatest, so Lightning Storm, Shifter, and then another Prosperity. Lightning Storm's pretty much dead, Shifter's pretty much dead because of the Prosperity in the graveyard now, so going for a second pot is the ideal way. He's already opened up the Martha, so an exact duplicate of the last game. Martha, and we saw Dark Ruler in the hand, so Martha, Shifter, Dark Ruler, it's like broken, bro. Summon out the Martha, Martha summons out Elise, and then that's going to give the second XYZ you need, so that's the Casper Tail, which will get you another another Exosister monster. And that will then ultimately allow you to get into a Magnifica and push through. So we're now just kind of waiting and see where this one goes. It goes for a second Machillis, that's interesting. So we're now going to see where this goes from here. So Machillis, we've definitely got a banish on board, so that Magnamute is not surviving. So he uses the first Machillis to search out a Exosister Spell or Trap, which is probably going to be Returnia, which is going to be another, you know, you just set yourself up for another like quadruple banish during the next turn, which is incredibly painful for a deck like this, for sure. So carrying moving forward, we're going to see for this, we've got the Returnia, there's the quick effect without having to detach off of the new Magnifica, and that's going to pretty much get rid of the Magnamute. Luckily there is a target in the graveyard for the Druid Swarm, so I could summon it out just to kind of defend up a little bit, but then that just gets banished off of the Magnifica, the Magnifica, so it's not looking the greatest. I suppose if I did it, the Magnifica would then still have a banish. So Druid Swarm, Magnamute gets banished off of the second or the new Magnifica, and then it's just how far he's going to get pushed with this half damage, ultimately. So at the moment there's 24 on board, especially someone's down the Elise. So he wants to get that extra 300 attack on the board, bro. Obviously the other downside of Elise as well is if I do now decide to use Druid Swarm, I would trigger the Elise as well, which is really annoying, because then that will just come back and bat me in my ass. So it's kind of just seeing where it's going to go. Like I said, when you're looking at this field, all he needs is another sister to the board. He hasn't conducted a normal summon, so if he's, instead of going for Eternia, you wouldn't have played Prosperity, and instead of going for Eternia, you would have gone for Pax. You would then activate the Pax, and the Pax would have then been able to summon down the missing monster. So then on this board that you see here, you would also add a Jabrain, and the Jabrain would then allow, would boost up the Magnifica for the OTK play. So Magnifica is only going to be able to pretty much swing in once. It will swing in twice, but it'll be half damage, so it only gets 28 on the board. Still, you know, pretty painful. I could have activated your Druid Swarm again here to try and bait out the Magnifica banish, but the issue is Druid Swarm again, it has to go to the graveyard, so if it gets banished it won't send, and if I did do that I would then just upgrade his Elise for him into any XYZ that he wants, so that would have been pretty damaging. I draw a Magnamute for turn, which is just as annoying, because yes, there's plenty of targets in the graveyard, but Magnamute's not going to do anything for me until the end phase, really. So we activate Archives. The idea for this is that I activate the Archives, I reveal a danger, get a Dark World to the graveyard, so that I can then discard a Dark World from the hand in order to try and ditch one, draw two. The idea was again, I didn't have any Dark Worlds in the hand at this point. I've pretty much bricked on Bysteals and bloody Dangers. So this one is kind of bait out, which I believe is exactly what happens. That Magnifica goes, nope, and then banishes it pretty cleanly. So it's going to be interesting to see how it kind of develops as well. So the Magnifica is going to respond to it. We've got 3 set of the back row. Now, obviously, at this moment in time, all I know is that there is a Returnia along those back row. He's still got cards in hand, so the Prosperity could be set, the Prosperity could be in hand. Doesn't really matter. But as you can see, there's nothing in my bloody graveyard. Nothing in my graveyard at all. So, not the best at the moment. We're going to start relying on the RNG of the dangers. So, keep in mind, not only are dangers RNG in the sense that they hit or they don't hit, but the draw could be great or could be garbage. So, you're always running a risk with something like that. We've still got the tag out, so the Magnifica can still turn into a Machillis, which will give him a non-target banish. Sorry, a target banish on the Machillis. So we've still got some threats to kind of deal with and think ahead of. Not to mention, of course, the Returnia is going to be a double banish because, you know, Returnia's busted. Such a good card when you have sisters. Like, I needed like a Lightning Storm or an Evenly at this point would have been great, but sadly not. We reveal a danger. He's going to respond with the Magnifica to go into Machillis, which puts that banish on, basically activates the banish or makes the banish live. So the card that gets hit off of the danger reveal is the Magnamute. So, you know, is what it is. I probably should have put the Nessie in attack, because then at least the Nessie could have got rid of the Elise, which would have been a bit more useful, but still then. I don't think the hand's that great at the moment. So we reveal Sukanoko. I think that was drawn off the Nessie. We reveal the remaining 3 cards, which one is a Druid Swarm, one is Nessie, and then one is Unknown, I believe. 1. So we hit the Druid Swarm, so it's like, okay, cool, that goes. Snake goes, draws 1. And then the hand is just, yeah, I think it's a gold that I draw for turn. So I've got it's gold and a danger, if I remember rightly. So again, it's not promising at all. It's quite sad. There's not really a link, so it's another Nessie. There you go. So we reveal Nessie and 1 Unknown. I think maybe the Nessie hits actually, so it's a 1. As a Genta, again, no other Dark World, so Genta couldn't be used. I could have used Genta to get the field spell. But again, there would have been nothing that I could have done with it. And then the draw for that Nessie was a gold. And it's like, yeah, I can't play with that. There's nothing I can do. Like, I can wall up. One of those is getting banished off of the Machillis. And then if he wanted to, he could activate the Returnia to banish the other 2. The board is clear. The Machillis is going in for 24 the next turn. And then all he needs is another sister, which is he'll get off of a Prosperity or something like that to continue to dig. So, not the ideal matchups in a Dark World perspective, but still a learning curve. You can kind of see... I mean, there's not much you can do when, you know, both games you face down Shifter, Dark Ruler, and full combo. So it's kind of like, ugh. Even in game 1, you saw that I kind of played through the Shifter as much as I possibly could. But anyway, I wanted to show you both, obviously, wins and loses. I don't want to just hide losses from you or anything. I want you to be able to see what happens when a Dark World loses or how it happens, and ways to play around it, what to avoid, how you could adapt it. And it also gives me the ability to look back on that duel and say, was there anything that I could have done a little bit differently? Ultimately, I don't think there was anything I could have done that would have changed the outcome of that game. Big sad. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, guys, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.